It began as an agricultural crawler and evolved into the most lethal kinetic weapon on the planet. Today, we trace the entire lineage of American steel across every generation. This is the definitive history of U.S. armor. WWII CLB-75, starting in the trenches of World War I with the CLB-75. This crude prototype was essentially a farm tractor dressed in boilerplate. It looked less like a weapon of war and more like an armored shipping crate on tracks. Holt Gas Electric America's first real crack at a tank, a gas-electric hybrid that was decades ahead of its engineering reality. Unfortunately, it was far too heavy and complex to survive the mud of the Western Front. Skeleton tank, a plumber's nightmare. Designers constructed a massive frame from iron pipes, hoping to bridge wide trenches without the weight penalty of solid armor. It was mostly empty space and entirely impractical. Ford 3-ton, the Model T of the battlefield, small, dirt cheap, and designed for swarm tactics. The plan was to drown the enemy in numbers, but the armistice was signed before they could flood the front lines. Mauer M, 1917, light tank, the American cousin to the French Renault AFT. This tank became the training backbone of the U.S. Army, keeping the concept of armor alive during the lean years following the Great War. Mark 8 Liberty, the Anglo-American landship, a colossal joint project. This trench-crossing Leviathan was long enough to span defenses, but its sheer bulk made it a logistical horror show to transport. Interwar period, 1921. Medium, a critical departure from the box tanks of the past. This unit introduced a fully traversing turret, establishing the silhouette that would define main battle tanks for the next century. M, 1922. Medium, an engineering exercise focused on ride quality using a complex cable suspension system. It was intended to smooth out the terrain, but mostly just created a maintenance nightmare for the motor pool. T1 Light Series. The Roaring Twenties experiments. These test beds pushed the envelope on speed, yet they lacked the ballistic protection required to survive a modern firefight. Christie M, 1919, the brainchild of the eccentric genius Walter Christie. This radical convertible could run on tracks or road wheels. It offered blistering highway speeds, but the War Department found the design too unconventional. T2 Medium A, heavy boxy attempt to marry a large cannon with multiple machine gun ports. It ended up being underpowered and overweight, a lesson in how not to build a medium tank. Christie M, 1931, Christie's magnum opus. Its revolutionary suspension system allowed it to virtually fly across broken terrain at velocities that baffled military planners in the early 1930s. M1 Light Series. To skirt isolationist budget laws, the cavalry dubbed these combat cars. They were lightly armored speedsters designed purely for reconnaissance and flanking, rather than head-on brawls. M2 Light Series, the direct lineage of the Stuart. Early models bristled with multiple turrets like a land battleship, but the design eventually matured into a reliable single-turret standard. T4 Medium, a fast medium tank utilizing the Christie suspension. It showed promise on hardball roads, but threw a mechanical tantrum the moment it hit deep mud. T7 Combat Car, an experiment in wheeled velocity. It was lightning quick on flat ground, but lacked the all-terrain versatility required for a true frontline combat vehicle. M2 Medium Series A machine gun porcupine. It featured sponsons pointing in every direction. While a poor duelist, it was the necessary stepping stone that taught engineers how to build the Sherman. Marmon Harrington CTLS, pint-sized armor built for export. Undergunned and under-armored, they were nonetheless cheap and simple to maintain during the desperate early days of global conflict. World War II. NM3 Stuart Series, legendary for its mechanical reliability. British crews christened this light tank the Honey. It became the premier scout vehicle, serving in every theater of the Second World War. MTL S1G14A, bizarre oddity featuring twin main guns in a single turret. Commissioned for the Dutch. much. These oddballs mostly ended up as training vehicles for U.S. crews stateside. CTMS, another export combatant that saw limited action. This three-man light tank tried to punch above its weight class but never found a permanent home in the U.S. arsenal. M3 Lee/Grant, the tall, awkward stopgap. With its main gun mounted in the hull sponson rather than the turret, it was obsolete by design, but it brought critical firepower when the Allies had nothing else. M4 Sherman series, the war winner. Neither the heaviest nor the deadliest, it dominated through reliability, logistics, and overwhelming production numbers. It was the anvil upon which the Axis was smashed. M6 Heavy Tank America's first crack at a heavy dreadnought. It was heavily armed and armored, but statistically too obese to cross most European bridges, dooming it to the testing grounds. M7 Medium. Medium started as a light tank, gained too much weight, and failed as a medium. It offered no advantage over the Sherman, so the brass scrapped the project. Me-E20/T22/T23 series, the experimental test beds for the future, with lower profiles and advanced transmissions. These prototypes laid the engineering groundwork for the post-war generation. M5 Stuart, the hot rod upgrade, powered by twin Cadillac engines. This light tank was exceptionally quick, remaining a viable asset for infantry support long after its armor was obsolete. M22 Locust Airborne Armor. Designed to fit inside a glider, it gave paratroopers heavy support, though its paper-thin steel left crews terrifyingly exposed once boots hit the ground. T-14 Heavy Adjoint British-American Assault Tank Project. A few prototypes were rolled out before command decided that tactical mobility trumped raw armor thickness. M24 Chaffee, a quantum leap in light tank design. Boasting a potent 75mm gun and a silky torsion bar suspension, the Chaffee was a lethal scout that could bite back. EM26 Pershing, the Tiger Tamer. Finally, a U.S. tank with the ballistic muscle to kill German heavy armor. It arrived late in the war, but set the standard for the modern main battle tank. Cold War and Korea. T-26E4 Super Pershing, a Frankentank experiment. Engineers welded massive boiler plates to the front and fitted a high-velocity gun, creating a balanced nightmare that was as lethal as it was clumsy. T-28/T95 Super Heavy, the Doom Turtle. Less a tank, more a mobile bunker. It required 4 sets of tracks to disperse its immense weight, designed solely to crack the Siegfried Line. T-29 Heavy, built to hunt king tigers. This monster sported a massive turret and heavy ordnance. It missed the war, but its DNA is found in nearly every Cold War heavy design. T-30 Heavy, the Bunker Buster, a variant of the T-29 equipped with a thunderous 155mm cannon, designed to demolish fortifications with sheer high explosive violence. T-32 Heavy, a Pershing on steroids. It utilized common components, but significantly up-armored the hull and turret, adding a long-range gun for sniper duties. T-34 Heavy, the final evolution of the post-war Heavy. It mounted a converted anti-aircraft gun, offering armor-piercing ballistics that were terrifying for the era. M46 Patton, the first to bear the Patton name, essentially a Pershing with a functional power plant. It served as the primary brawler during the bitter fighting of the Korean War. T-41 Light Tank, the experimental scout that would mature into the Walker Bulldog. The design mandate was speed, agility, and air transportability. M41 Walker Bulldog, a high-performance light tank beloved by crews. Known for its handling and punchy gun, it saw combat worldwide as a highly effective reconnaissance platform. T-42 Medium, the bridge to the future. While the hull was mediocre, the turret design was so successful, it was hijacked to create the M47. M47 Patton, the Stopgap Warrior, a rush job marriage of a new turret and an old hull, pumped out to meet the urgent demands of the heating Cold War. M48 Patton, the icon of Vietnam, a completely new design featuring a cast turtle shell, hull, and turret. It provided excellent ballistic protection and became the workhorse of the era. T-54 Medium, an attempt to to stuff a heavy gun into a medium chassis, it utilized an oscillating turret to manage the recoil without increasing the vehicle's footprint. T-69 Medium. The autoloader experiment featuring a bobbing oscillating turret. This tank tried to automate the loading process to reduce crew size and increase rate of fire. T-92 Light Tank, a sci-fi profile. This low-slung, air-droppable tank looked alien, but the military ultimately canceled it in favor of more conventional, utilitarian designs. T-95 Medium Series. The high-tech playground. This series tested smoothbore guns and composite armor, innovations that would eventually birth the M1 Abrams. M103 heavy tank, the last of the American giants. Designed to snipe Soviet heavy armor from extreme ranges with a massive 120mm rifled cannon. T-57 Heavy, an experimental heavy tank featuring an oscillating turret and an autoloader. The mechanism proved too complex and unreliable for battlefield conditions. T-58 Heavy, the heavyweight champion, a prototype swinging a massive 155mm gun in an oscillating turret designed for maximum destruction. T-110 series, the claustrophobic challenge. Design studies meant to compress a heavy tank into a package small enough to fit through narrow Swiss tunnels. Late Cold War and Vietnam. M60 Patton, the Cold War Sentinel, the first true U.S. main battle tank. It stood watch on the Fulda Gap for decades, receiving constant upgrades to stay relevant. M551 Sheridan, the aluminum assassin, air-droppable and capable of firing both conventional shells and Shalala missiles. It was essentially a soda can with a cannon. MBT-70, the billion-dollar failure, a sci-fi joint venture with Germany. Packed with gadgets, it became too expensive and complex to ever see mass production. XM803, the budget bailout, a stripped-down version of the MBT-70, attempting to salvage the tech while making it affordable. It failed to impress. M60A2 Starship, named for its futuristic look, this M60 variant mounted a 152mm gun launcher. The complex missile system was a maintenance nightmare in the field. M1 Abrams, the paradigm shift. With a jet turbine engine and Chobham armor, it redefined mobility and protection, rendering previous generations obsolete overnight. RDF/LT, Rapid Deployment Force Light Tank. A high-velocity gun mounted on a tiny chassis, designed to be flown in and fight from a hull-down position. HIMAG, the laboratory on wheels, an experimental test bed for high-agility suspension systems, pushing the physics of how a tank moves. Expeditionary Tank, a Marine Corps concept. It featured a remote ghost turret to save weight, prioritizing speed for amphibious assaults. Stingray, the private venture, built by Cadillac Gauge for export. It offered main battle tank firepower on a chassis light enough to flank the enemy. M1A1 Abrams, the Desert Storm, the upgrade that gave the Abrams its signature 120mm smoothbore. It became the icon of the Gulf War, dominating Soviet-made armor with impunity. Modern era. M1A2 Abrams, the Digital Warrior. This evolution integrated thermal independent sights and battlefield networking, turning the tank into an information hub. M8AGS, the Lost Replacement, an armored gun system with modular armor meant to succeed the Sheridans, sadly killed by post-Cold War budget slashes. LAV-105, the Glass Cannon, an attempt to strap a main gun onto a wheeled chassis, fast and lethal, but ultimately stuck in the prototype phase. Abrams TTB, the Tank Test Bed. It placed the crew safely deep in the hull, while a remote unmanned turret handled the firing, a precursor to future designs. M1CTTB, the Monster, a test bed swinging a massive 140mm cannon designed to defeat threat armor that didn't even exist yet. XM1202, the Future Combat System, meant to be a lightweight, networked smart tank deployable anywhere globally. Ambition exceeded technology. Griffin II, the new lightweight contender. Combining Abrams' lethality with a lighter chassis, it served as the prototype for the Army's newest acquisition. precision. M10 Booker, the newest iron in the arsenal. Officially, mobile protected firepower. It fills the infantry support gap that has existed since the retirement of the Sheridan. Abrams X, the hybrid future, a technology demonstrator featuring electric drive and an unmanned turret. It promises stealth and fuel efficiency previously impossible for heavy armor. M1E3 Abrams, the next leap, the upcoming evolution focusing on weight reduction and active protection systems to survive a battlefield saturated with drones and top attack missiles. From a farm tractor wearing a steel box to an AI-assisted predator, the evolution of American armor is a century-long lesson in lethality. The platforms change, the calibers get bigger, and the tech gets smarter. But the objective remains exactly the same: holding the line and dominating the ground war.